this is something completely new for me, like Strictly. I never in a million years thought like I'd be doing that. I think people always assume that people from reality background get paid to just go to nightclubs and that we don't really have a brain and we don't really have a purpose and that we're just blagging life.
And what's the truth?
Some of that's true.
I would love to know what your self-worth was like at that point.
I don't think I had any. Until you understand your own thoughts and feelings, it's very difficult for you to find a way through darkness because you have to have a starting point.
When did you last cry?
At the weekend.
And why?
Because something came on and said it reminded me of my nan.
What was it about your nan that was golden?
This episode is supported by Huel.
Well, Pete, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I actually love having you on here because I think that you're the kind of guest that challenges people's perception, right, of what high performance is.
Yeah, I can't imagine people look at me and think high performance.
What do you think they do think when they look at you?
Wally, probably. Do you know what? Because of the reality background, I think people always assume that people from reality background come from the same sort of thing. They never really wanted to do a real job. They just kind of fell into TV and kind of get paid to just go to nightclubs and do whatever else. I think that's the perception people have, that we don't really have a brain and we don't really have a purpose and that we're just blagging life.
And what's the truth?
Some of that's true. But I think, my background's probably a lot different. I didn't get into reality TV till I was, 25? And pre that, I had quite a good, serious job. I was working in the city for years as an international sales director for a medical recruitment company. So I had like a proper job. I was doing long days and I kind of did that from nothing. I didn't do very well at school. I didn't kind of go to uni and do all that sort of stuff. I just wanted to go and earn money. So kind of working was always something that I've always done. And I just kind of fell into the TV thing. I never wanted to be famous. I never watched any reality TV. I still don't watch any of it now. I've never watched anything I've done on TV, like not one ththing. Couldn't think of anything worse. And people always say to me, why? And I always think, well, you don't watch yourself at work, do you? You don't watch it back. So yeah, I think I'm probably very different to what people imagine.
So you're almost like a reluctant reality star.
Yeah, it's something that I fell into and now that's what I do. So now you have to make the best of what you do. But yeah, it's a very weird thing. I never saw myself doing this.
So let me ask you then, what is high performance? If I say high performance to you, what do you think of?
High performance, I think, is, it depends who's looking at it. If you're looking at high performance in someone else, then you imagine success, but success for everyone is completely subjective, isn't it? So high performance for me is doing the best I can at everything I do, regardless of what it is. That's the way I see it in my own life. But I imagine what people's perception of that is very different. Because when you look at other people and you see high performance as really successful people with, money and CEOs and whatever else. But why can't, like a single mum raising 3 kids on her own, be high performance?
You are totally right. Yeah, so we've done over 300 episodes, right, of this show. And myself and Damien Hughes, who I co-host the show with, he and I have come up with high performance as 3 sentences. Do the best you can where you are with what you've got.
Yeah.
So some days your high performance might look incredible, like you can be really on it. Other days, it might just be not crying.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Getting out of bed and having a shower.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. And I think that's the problem, is society tells us that high performance is being at the top of whatever you are at all points. And that's not always the case.
Well, let's talk then about the journey that you've been on from those days when maybe you thought a little bit differently to this.
Yeah.
So you've got a new book.
Yes.
And having read the book, and it's fascinating, so much interesting stuff in there. I think it's a really powerful book.
When you get past the swearing?
Well, there's quite a lot of swearing. But thankfully, a couple of the really bad swear words, there was a little asterisk on them. So well done.
Yeah, thank you.
But there's one word which comes up over 100 times. Do you know what that word is?
No.
Anger.
Yeah. Is it over 100 times? Wow. You really went with the word count.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm that sad.
Yeah, Christ. Anger. That's probably been one of the overriding feeling I've probably had for most of my life. But again, and I kind of touched on it in the book, I don't necessarily think that's because I'm always angry. I think that was just the easiest emotion for me to be able to express. And I think sometimes, not just men, it's not a gender thing, but I think more commonly men struggle with processing their own emotions and how they're feeling. So a lot of the time it can be anxiety or whatever else, and it comes out as anger and it shows itself as anger. And I think that's been the case with me, and it's kind of been the go-to thing to get angry about something, because it's a way of releasing whatever you're feeling. Same as what crying might be or whatever else, it kind of releases things, doesn't it? It releases that kind of tension in your body to not know how to deal with something. And anger has kind of always been the way that I've dealt with it. But also a lot of things over the years have probably made me quite angry. And it's kind of been a safe space. Anger's been a safe space, which sounds like a really ridiculous thing to say, but that's kind of how I viewed it. And as I've got older, I've kind of realised that, but at the time you don't kind of realise, and you just think, God, I'm just a really angry person all the time.
Explain, before we talk about the things that made you angry and how the anger manifested itself, that line, anger was a safe space. Explain that.
I felt more comfortable being angry than I did happy. Which is a real weird thing to say, but happiness was kind of fleeting, and I think sometimes happiness is fleeting. There's not a lot of people that can kind of say that they are happy all the time, but people kind of try and be happy all the time. And I think sometimes that's fake happiness. Pretending to be happy all the time isn't being happy, because it's not really acknowledging how you actually feel. And I think for me, anger was... It was something that I felt more comfortable being because I understood it.
It's because it's what you were. It's almost like what you're saying is, I think anger was the real you. Like every time you were happy, that was a front, that was a bit false.
Yeah.
Whereas the only time that you were able to truly be you was when you were like, ah!
Yeah.
Because you had something in you.
And I didn't feel uneasy being angry, but I felt uneasy being happy.
I think it would be really valuable for people if you took us back quite a few years to like young Pete, like what did anger look like? How often was it? How did it manifest itself? Because the stories in the book are like, they're pretty searing in the seriousness of the way the anger was coming out of you. Yeah.
I mean, I was, weirdly enough, I wasn't an angry child, which is good. But then it kind of out of nowhere, well, not really out of nowhere. I think I look back on it and think it was out of nowhere, and actually doing the book was quite cathartic to recognise things that may have affected why I was angry. You know, like I said a million times in the book that, you know, it's not a pity party, and everyone has struggles throughout their life, and it doesn't matter what your kind of struggles are, they're no worse than anyone else's. But I think certain things developed a point where I was angry at not understanding what was happening around me.
Yeah.
And it's probably why I'm a bit of a control freak in some ways now, is I like to be completely in control of my emotions, which is very hard. No one can do that. You can only really react or control your reaction to what happens rather than control what actually happens. But I think I developed to a point where I wanted to be in control of everything that happened.
So what were the things then that had gone on to make you angry, that you now realise were the triggers?
I think a lot of it comes down to...
Look, we all know the struggle of deciding what to eat, but what if I told you that Huel can make that decision easier? Their Taster Bundle has got 8 ready-to-drink bottles, including their Black Edition, which has got 35 grams of protein, 6 daily A to Z vitamins, 8 complete nutrition bars, 2 hot savoury pots, and a free Huel t-shirt. All you have to do is click the link in the description to unlock your offer now at huel.com/highperformance.
You know, my mum and dad divorced, and that's a fairly that's a fairly normal thing to happen to people. So there's no reason why that should have been a trigger for me. But I think the situation in how they kind of divorced and what happened thereafter, I didn't fully understand as a child.
Go on.
Because my dad, you know, he pretty much from the divorce, that was it. He kind of left, and I didn't see him very often, and I really looked up to my dad, so not having him around, and it's not like he was, you know, a real kind of emotional, cuddly dad, but he was I just thought he was just the best. Everything I did was to try and make him proud, and then not having that there, I kind of didn't know where I was. And then my mum had a kind of a new man who, you know, wasn't my dad, you're not my real dad, all that sort of stuff. But my mum's mental health was bad at the time, really bad. And that's something I didn't understand, because I felt like my dad had left, so he didn't want me. My mum wasn't really present properly, which again probably made me feel like she didn't want me, so I had to then do things on my own. And I think I was angry about that. I was angry that why am I not enough for people to want to stick around? And then that kind of made everything an issue. So I went out of my way to be bigger, louder, better than I needed to be, but that wasn't really me. I felt like I had to be enough for everyone all the time. And when things didn't go my way, it made me quite angry, because it's really weird, because it's only been since, you know, I wrote the book and that I've kind of looked back on these things and I've not fully processed the full reasons why. It's starting to look at saying, and that's kind of, you know, what the book is about, is a work in progress. There's no, I think you'll spend the rest of your life learning different things about you, and different things will happen and different situations. You know, I lost my nan, and that's what kind of made me think about looking back at things and reflecting on things to work out why I'm the way I am now and who I am now and what that has come from.
Yeah, and I think it's so powerful for people, because when your reaction to the moment, right, whether it is your mum's mental health challenges, the loss of your nan, or your dad leaving, when your reaction to those things changes, right, as it does over time, it's a reminder that you've changed as a person.
Yeah.
Right? So if you were still feeling the same about your dad's departure, kind of be sad in some ways, because it shows a lack of growth. Like, I had a trauma when I was a kid. I've spoken often on this podcast of family suicide, right? And I obviously cried at the funeral and was upset. I cry more now at 46 about that moment. Yeah. Every time I recall it, it gets me like more. And it's very interesting how that happens, isn't it? I don't know whether you sort of, you know, you would have had anger at that time, and now when you know, you talk about your dad leaving and the impact on you, it probably gets you more now that.
Yeah, massively.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, massively, because I think I developed a blocking stuff out thing, you know, and I've said that, and I still I almost find it hard to talk about. I mean, you just used the word trauma. I would never use that word about my childhood. Ever.
Why? You're 12 years old, your mum's got mental health challenges, your dad's left, you've got no one to explain to you how to process this stuff that's happening in your life. Of course it's a trauma.
See, I would never, because I always thought you should be able to deal with that. That's listen, people have got far worse than you. You should be able to deal with that.
How far would that get you?
Well, it didn't get me very far at all. But that's kind of, even now I find it difficult to say, oh, you know, that was a trauma, because I just think, I know, and I see so many people I think are such good people who have had far worse lives than me and have managed to navigate their way through that better than I ever did. And then it makes me think, well, listen, you know, you're not good enough. You should have done better. And it's only really now that I can kind of go, all right, look, that probably has affected things.
You do realise that someone else, we all talk about this, someone else achieving something great doesn't mean I've achieved anything less, right? We're all comfy with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the flip is also true. Just because someone has had a far greater trauma than you doesn't make your trauma any less of a trauma.
And do you know what's mad is that I say that to other people, and I literally say it to other people. You know, I had a friend recently called me, and he's 40 years old, and his parents are divorced, and it was like his world was ending. But that's a massive thing. Regardless of him being 40, it makes it no worse or no better than me being 12. It's still a trauma. It doesn't mean you can't compare traumas. And I think that's what people tend to do. And I think that's probably what I've done. I've always put mine as less than other people's, and actually blamed myself for not being able to deal with it properly. The way that I got to that point was not the correct way of doing things, and it didn't really matter to me. I didn't really feel or understand anyone else being proud of me, because I wasn't proud of myself. And it's, you know, if you can't be proud of yourself and you can't be happy with your own performance in something, it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks about it.
Are you proud of yourself now?
No. And I can say that easily, and everyone kind of, and it's really weird, because people can look at things and go, yeah, but this is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But that's part of recognising that that's something that needs to change. And every day, you know, when I was writing the book, someone told me about this kind of feelings wheel and trying to give yourself say something positive about yourself every day and all that sort of stuff. And I struggle to do it. I just struggle to do it. And that's, but I recognise that that's the wrong way of looking at things. But yeah, I'm not proud of myself.
Let me ask you then, what's great about you?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I find things that are really hard to answer. Genuinely, really hard to answer. Makes me very uncomfortable.
Does it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Like, because this is really all it's about.
Yeah.
At the very end, you know, you have a podcast called Staying Relevant, right? We both know, because I'll be in the same boat. Both of us will be irrelevant one day.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
There is no doubt about that.
I don't think I've ever actually been relevant, to be fair.
I don't agree. And then all that's really left is your self-worth, is your opinion of yourself.
Yeah.
So you need to find a way to solve this.
Yeah, completely. And I think that's...
Have you done work on it, or...?
Yeah, it's part of the last couple of years, specifically as well, have been about that. It's about finding the good in me that I see. It doesn't matter what other people see. And it's lovely when people say lovely things to you and whatever else, but if you don't believe it, it doesn't really matter. You could do without it. You know, and listen, because of being in the public eye, and like you say, you get bombarded with people saying lovely things all the time, and you get some shitty things, but most of the time it's really, really lovely, and that is beautiful, and it's really nice to hear that. But it makes me feel a little bit fraudulent.
So what are the things that give you that feeling of shame?
My reactions to things when I was younger, not being better in situations. You know, I speak about it in the book. My mum tried to take her own life, and I still hold a lot of blame for that. I feel a lot of blame for that. And despite the fact that I kind of understand more that wasn't necessarily her, and that was her lowest point. And my mum is my absolute hero. I absolutely adore her, and the journey that she's been on from then to now is nothing short of incredible. Like, she is just the strongest, most amazing person in the world. But at that low point, I wasn't enough for her to not want to do that. And maybe if I'd have been better or been enough at the time, then she wouldn't have felt the need to be low enough to even consider that. You know?
Yeah.
And I think that's a major turning point and thing in her life that she will never forget. And maybe that could have been prevented, because I was there, but I wasn't enough. And if I had been, then that would have been something that she won't have to remember for the rest of her life and hold guilt for, because I know she holds guilt for it, and she shouldn't, because that wasn't down to her.
And you've had this conversation with her?
Only since my nan died, yeah.
And how long ago was that?
2 years, just over 2 years.
So when you first said to your mum, like, I have this feeling that I'm partly responsible for your attempt to take your own life because I wasn't enough. Yeah. What was her reaction to that?
I think it's probably the worst thing I could have sold her, because she I think already held a lot of guilt in herself, and then I just felt awful then, because I felt like I put more guilt onto her, and that's not the case. It's not down to that. Wasn't her. That wasn't her. That was, and this is why kind of now mental health is spoken about quite a lot, and it should be, but sometimes I think I don't feel like it's spoken about in the right way. I think sometimes a lot of it is, just talk, and that's great, and that works for so many people, but it doesn't work for everyone. And also, everyone is so individual. The most beautiful thing about you, me, and everyone is that you're completely and utterly unique. No one feels and thinks the way you do. Yeah. So there's no one-size-fits-all answer to mental health, and there's no cure. You're gonna have that for the rest of your life, regardless. And everyone has the ability to suffer in different ways and have trigger points that may lead you down a path that is not great. Everyone has that within them, and it's about ensuring that you can create prevention of getting yourself to that point. And I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't think there is an answer necessarily that you can just throw around to everyone. It's something you have to work on yourself within you and understanding yourself better. And I think that's again, part of what I think men specifically don't do, but also, again, it's not a gender thing, is that until you understand your own thoughts and feelings, it's very difficult for you to find a way through darkness, because you have to have a starting point. Does that make sense?
It makes absolutely perfect sense. And look, thank you for sharing it so eloquently. The way that you talk about mental health, I think, is so valuable, because you're totally right. We still talk about mental health in a way where we dance around the subject a bit. I'm feeling a bit down at the moment. Yeah, I'm not really myself. Like, what are you actually saying? And the problem is, it then leaves people like your mum in a position where they do feel there's just no other alternative here. And, when we had a family suicide, it was my grandma, not as close as my mum, right? But I had a not dissimilar experience where a few days before she'd walked past me and I was doing some revision, she said, I don't think I can carry on. And I remember going, you'll be fine, and carrying on with my schoolwork, right? And I'm sure you've been over those sorts of moments in your head as well, where you think one slightly different conversation there could have changed everything. And what reconciled things, I think, eventually for me, is that my grandma took her own life despite the fact that we were all there, right? Yeah. Your mum attempted it despite the fact that you were there and you were enough and she loved you and you were her everything and still are. Not because of, Yeah. But for someone with the self-worth at the level that you have it, of course, who's the person you're going to blame?
Yeah.
It all comes back to that same point, doesn't it? Of you finding a way to think that Pete Wicks is worth loving.
Yeah, and I think that's, even from that, going into, relationships and everything else, it's, as soon as that kind of closeness develops, I'm like, right, I'm off then. It's a case of, leaving before someone leaves you. And it's that classic, like, what do they call it? Abandonment, attachment.
Abandonment syndrome.
So, whatever it may be. And again, that's a really common thing, but you're basically self-sabotaging, because at least, and this is the control freak part, at least I'm in control of that.
So do you have a partner now?
No. And listen, I never thought I wanted to get married or have kids. And again, over the last few years, I would love to get married. I would love to have kids. But I'm not in a position to be able to do that yet, because there is still so much weird stuff in my head that would be so unfair for me to be able to go and do that. And I think that's, it may be to the point that I may never get married, I may never have kids, and that's okay. But I would love to. I don't know anyone why wouldn't you? What's the point of doing amazing things? And I'm so blessed and so fortunate to do some of the amazing shit that I do, if you haven't got someone to share that with,
Absolutely.
And I never really saw that before, but now I certainly do. And I would love that, but it's not a need, it's a want. And I think that's important as well.
So what work are you doing at the moment to get to that point?
The past couple of years, it's been about doing new things.
Yeah.
Changing the way I do things, what I'm doing, finding things within my life that I genuinely enjoy.
Give us some examples of what works for you.
I mean, and these are really minor things, and this is always, I think, again, when people talk about making changes, they always think about the big changes. But actually, it's not the big changes. It's as simple as, for me, like motorbikes is a massive thing for me. I love it. I absolutely love it. I've got a really amazing group of friends that I ride with who are all just motorbike mad. They know nothing about my life, like nothing. It's a complete break from what I do on a day-to-day. And it's like a meditation for me. Because when you're on the bike, I don't think about anything. There's not a million things running through my head. It's literally just blank space. And that is really soothing, because it's not like a million miles an hour. It's a really soothing thing to have, because you're just there in the moment and living for the moment. And I think a lot of people don't do that. And the other, funny enough, which kind of segues into that, is animals. Like my dogs I absolutely adore. I prefer animals to people by far, for the main reason they live for the moment. They don't care what you look like, where you've been. They don't care where you're going. They're just happy there. And that's a really beautiful, beautiful thing. And if people were more like that, then I think we'd all be a lot happier, because it's whatever is happening there is the best thing that's ever happened. And that's so beautiful. Yeah. And being around animals just makes me happy. And again, that's like a therapy thing, and spending more time with animals and spending more time on the bike and giving myself that space to go, right, I need a day away from everything else to go on the bike and just refresh is really important, because it's like a recharge. And things like that, even just doing them little things and giving myself the time and the space to do that really helps.
Brilliant.
Like really helps. And they're minor things.
Yeah,
they're
but
not big.
That's why they're so valuable to people. Because I think that we think that if we've got some mental health challenges or we're not feeling that in a good place, there must be a huge fix I need to do now.
Yeah.
And it isn't like that. It's about finding what works for you. But the crucial thing I think you mentioned there at the end is I have to give myself the space to do it. So how do you make sure that those things happen in your life regularly? Because too many people, and they message us, they're like, I know what I love, but life's too busy.
Yeah. But when life's too busy, it passes you by. And unfortunately, and again, like anything, losing my nan, everyone loses grandparents. That's life. That's kind of the way it is. But life really, and it's so cliche, but life really is too short. And if you spend your whole life being busy working towards something, then what's the point? Because you'll get to the destination, but you won't remember any of the journey, And that's a really pointless exercise. That's absolutely pointless. And I think for me, it's about now recognising I feel like a lot's going on.
Yeah.
I'm not in a good space. I need to give myself that time. So it's about booking that time off, doing whatever. And it's not about regularly doing it. You don't have to do it every Saturday, every whatever it may be, because sometimes life is really busy, and it's great that it's busy, but sometimes it's busy and it's not good. And that's when you have to go, no, I need the time out. Otherwise, everything I do from this point will not be to the best of my ability. And when you're doing things not to the best of your ability, then what's the point? It's kind of, that's part of the high performance thing. Everything I do, I want to do to the best of my ability. But I have to set myself up to be able to do that. Because as soon as you go into saying a 50% of yourself, you're not doing it to the best of your ability. Doesn't matter what it is. That could just be spending time with friends. If you're only 50% there, then you're really spending time with them. If you're going to work, if you're only 50% there, you're really working the way you should be working. If you are, even if you're just supposed to be chilling out and you have a night to yourself, but if you're still, everything's going through your head, are you really chilling? You're not, because you're not refreshing. Giving yourself a night off or a day off, but not doing something that makes you happy is pointless. Or doing something that you want to do. If you're constantly doing things for other people as well, that's not giving you the space to be you and do what you want to do. And you can't help anyone unless you help yourself.
And how does the feeling manifest itself in you when you know the moment has come for you to take a break?
I'm snappy and harder on myself than I am. I go back to 15 years ago, and I can feel it, because even at the minute, I'm doing Strictly at the minute. It's a lot. I'm not a dancer. I've got no rhythm, but I love learning new things. But it gets to a point where, if I'm not getting something, I can feel myself getting really angry at myself. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I need to just pump outside and have a cigarette and just go, what are you doing? Have a word with yourself. And then go back in, refresh, and then suddenly it clicks again. Because when you go and do something and you're not in the right headspace to do it, you're never going to be able to do it.
I'm going to tell you a secret that I've noticed about high performers. They are laser focused on the power of the gut. You heard me right, the gut. Because the gut and overall health are intrinsically linked. And that's why so many high performers take a probiotic. And one which keeps on being discussed is this, Biotic by Heights. I've been taking it for over a year now, and it is so good. It's one of only 3 products in Europe that's Informed Sports certified. That means it's taken by Olympians, Premier League footballers, Guinness World Record holders, international rugby players. Quite simply, this is gut health for champions. So master your microbiome and treat yourself to a high-performing gut for a high-performance lifestyle with 20% off your first month. Just go to heights.com/HP or enter the code HP20 at checkout to get 20% off and start seeing the difference that Heights could make to your health.
And you saying that I just get snappy with myself, I get short with myself. Most people wouldn't think that those are symptoms of having an issue with your mental health, right? But they absolutely are. And that's the other important thing we have to talk about is people think, you must be depressed. What? Oh, you must be sad all the time. No, that's not it.
No.
So Mark Cavendish, the cyclist, right? He did a brilliant episode on high performance and he spoke about the fact that he was getting really wound up by the noise his wife was making walking around the house. Just the noise of her feet and he was irrationally furious and upset about it.
I do exactly the same thing.
We spoke about it on the show and then we got more than 5 but less than 20 messages, right, from men saying, I think I've got a mental health problem because I didn't equate that to being a mental health problem, but I get exactly the same thing. I literally can't handle hearing my kids making a noise or hearing someone in the house make a noise. And they'd never spoken about it because they assumed that that's not what mental health is.
Mental health can be an obsessive focus. An obsessive focus on something like that is because there's stuff going on that you need a release for. And I think that sometimes that's the case, is that emotions and different feelings bubble up and build up within inside you that you can't understand. You don't know why necessarily they're there, and it may snowball, and it could be one little thing, 2 little things, 3 little things, and it becomes a bigger problem. And then what you're looking for is a release. Your body, your mind, everything needs a release. So you'll focus on something that may give you, and it's that fucking hell.
Yeah.
Shut up. That's not anything to do with the noise, because you would have heard that noise a million times before. But at that moment, that noise becomes the focus because of everything else. And that is exactly what mental health is. Mental health, everyone just assumes mental health is this big, depressed, I want to lock myself away and I don't want to, and they're the classic symptoms. And of course, yes, they are. But also it's the tiny symptoms. Everyone has everyone has a brain, everyone has a mind, and that being healthy is important. So mental health is not specific to some people. I suffer with mental health, I don't. You do. Everyone does.
Correct.
Everyone does. It's not a choice, and it's not some people have it, some people don't. We all do. Completely, we all do. And more people go, no, I don't suffer with any of that. You do. We all have anxiety. We all have those feelings. Some people aren't, you're not born with it. I don't have those feelings. We all have them. We all have the ability to feel them. But it's just at different points and different triggers and different reasons that some of those feelings can become consuming and overwhelming. You always had it, but something's happened that's triggered it. But actually, if we get to a point, especially in like younger people, of people being able to talk and understand how they're feeling at that point, it's not just happy, sad or angry.
Yeah.
Within happy, there are loads of different feelings. There's loads of different kind of subplots to how you feel, and trying to address those and work those out. And we've all got this amazing cocktail of emotions within us, and everyone's is different, completely different. But trying to understand your own cocktail is really, really important. And I think the younger that people start doing that, the easier it will become for them to navigate through dark times and good times. Because again, mental health is not just about bad times. Your mental health suffers when everything's great as well, because you get this kind of, this is just the way it's going to be, but that crash is going to happen at some point. How do you deal with that? When you go on this roller coaster, and reality TV is a prime example. You go from there to and then if it doesn't stay like that, what happens? Because you don't know, because you've got this high and you've kind of forgotten what it was like before. And that's because just as people, we don't understand or talk about feelings and emotions properly. And I'm completely hypocritical for this, because I don't. And I haven't throughout my life.
So would you ever talk like this with your mates?
No. I find it easier to talk to you because, and I mean this in most respect, because you're a stranger.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I find it easier to be around.
It's a lot safer to have this conversation with me.
Completely. And I find it a lot easier. If I'm not in a good place, I find it a lot easier to be around people I don't really know, because they can't see me. Does that make sense? Yeah, exactly. So, when I am down, sad, or whatever else, I distance myself from everyone I love. Because I don't want to put the burden and the pressure on them. I don't want, but I can be around people that I don't necessarily know because I can front it and do whatever else, and I find it a lot easier to do that. And I think a lot of people do that. You block out the people you love a little bit when you're feeling a certain type of way, and that's so selfish as well, because those people are there to love you and support you, and you would always be there for them, but you won't allow them to be there for you. And accepting help and accepting people's love, I find really difficult.
And what popped out at the end there was another example of the lack of love, self-love, that it's not selfish, Pete, to distance yourself from the people you love when you're in a difficult moment. It isn't selfish. It's just what you need to do. Yeah. And I think that's one of the challenges that we often have is we're too quick to label our behaviour as good or bad. It just is.
Yeah.
It just is. And if anyone judges that behaviour, then maybe they're not the right people to be around you, because you just have to do what is right. And just because society tells you that when you're struggling you should hang out with the people that you love, that's not right. It's what works for you.
And funny enough, this is, I said it earlier on, that everyone has to find out a way. It's not just about talking. You can do different things that kind of help your mental health. But I won't give myself the same thing that I would say to other people. Like I'm a lot of, and this is going to sound really weird, but amongst my kind of friends and people around me, I'm kind of the one that people go to for advice and whatever else, because I can give good advice and I can listen and whatever else, but I cannot accept it myself, and I don't follow my own advice. And it's also, this is another thing about mental health. This sounds like I'm on a rant about mental health. Advice I find really difficult when it comes to mental health. Examples I think are fine, but you can't tell someone how to get through something. You have to work out yourself. You have to take responsibility to work it out yourself, but be willing to do that. And there's so many different tools and avenues you can go down to do that, and you have to be open to doing that. But sometimes I think just having someone to listen to you, you don't even have to say something, just being able to speak your mind and work it out yourself helps you. It becomes quite cathartic. And I think that's just as important as getting an answer. You can't ask someone for the solutions to what's going on inside your head, because they have no idea. Yep. You have to find the solutions yourself. And that's really a lonely place to be. And I think that's probably the hardest part of it, is that no one else can really help. And that sounds really pessimistic and shit, but that's the truth. It has to start with you. And that's really lonely, but you have to be willing to do that, and you have to actually give yourself the time to do that, because if you don't, you're not going to get anywhere. And that's the dangerous part.
What about therapy, though? Do you go and see therapists? You sit down and have these kinds of conversations with people?
I don't.
Why not?
Because... And listen, my mum's had therapy, and I know so many people around me that have had therapy, and it's really helped them. And I would love to have therapy. I don't think and I've tried certain things, but I don't think I'm in a position where I will be honest. And then there's no point.
How honest have you been for the last hour?
Fairly honest.
Only fairly honest.
Yeah. Because I think there's still some things that I hold back on.
Because of shame?
Yeah. And I think until you fully accept where you're at, I think it's very difficult to move forward, because you're not starting from the beginning, are you?
Mate, I promise you, if you went to see a therapist and started...
They'd have a fucking field day, wouldn't they?
They might pay their mortgage off, right?
Yeah, Christ, geez, this is a long one.
Honestly, if you
get that extension,
and if you went with the greatest shame, right, you'd be amazed at how things lift. So I came to London in my early 20s to be a kids' TV presenter, right? And you would have.
I remember you, mate, back in the day.
Do you?
Yeah.
Makes me feel really old. And I had a real a mental health challenge at that point, right? And the things that I was thinking was so filled with shame and embarrassment. I thought, there's no way I can tell anyone. And it's very different to what you've experienced, because this is something that you've lived with all your life, whereas I had an episode and I went to see someone. She said, tell me the thing that is making you feel most shameful. I told her, and she just sort of almost laughed, like, that's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
She said, the fact that you're telling me tells me everything is fine. And that moment, everything changed.
And I think you're so right, and so many people around me have said, Pete, just go.
Yeah.
Go to therapy. And do you know what? Part of it, and this is again really sad, is that I have always tried to be so independent. Part of me still thinks I can work it out.
Do you really believe you can?
Yeah.
But the evidence would suggest otherwise.
Oh, the evidence would suggest that I'm absolutely nowhere near that. But but probably arrogance probably still thinks, surely you could do this. Surely you can do it. And that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I know that's wrong. And so many people have told me, and, you know, it's something that up until, again, like the kind of the book and actually speaking some of this stuff out loud, because I've you know, there's stuff in the book that I'd never told my mum, there's stuff in there that people don't know about, people that I've known, you know, 15, 20 years, are like, I didn't know that, people that I've been around. And probably up until the book, I would have just said absolutely not. And it's definitely something now that I am considering.
So total honesty, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 is going to therapy as soon as you leave this interview, and 0 is where you would have been when you were a lot younger. Where would you be on that?
7.
I think that's a reason for optimism.
Yeah, 100%. And again, you know, up until a couple of years ago, it would have been no way. I can figure this out, and I will figure this out.
Talking of optimism, we talk so often about challenges or traumas, although you wouldn't call them traumas, from our childhood, causing us issues and problems. But what about the great stuff that it gives us as well? You know, there's an awful lot of research of trauma leading to triumph. People talk about post-traumatic growth. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
I wouldn't be who I am today if it hadn't have been for any of the things that have happened throughout my life, the good, the bad, and everything. The person that I am now is very different to the person I was 10 years ago, and also the person I will be in 10 years is very different to who I am now. And I accept that, and I love that kind of growth, because, you know, it's the same reason when it comes to dating, you know, I always say to people, I've never had a bad date. And that's not because I'm a great date. That's because even if, you know, it doesn't work out the way you want it to, you can learn something from everyone you meet, whether it's good, bad, and whatever else. And it's the same. I feel the same with the good and bad that happen in your life. There's things that you can take from that and positives that you can take. You know, regardless of some of the things that happen, I'm still here. And that's important. I'm still here, and I'm still trying, and I'm still willing to try, and I'm still willing to try and be better. And I think that to me is a triumph. But also it's a triumph. I've seen it with my mum, from where she is and from the lowest of the low to where she is now is the biggest story of victory and triumph and success that you could ever imagine. She is what I define as success, because from the pits to where she is now is nothing short of a miracle. And there's so many people like that who don't get the credit they deserve, because, you know, it's similar with the book. It was part of writing the book was I asked my mum's permission to tell the story, and she wanted the story to be told because it would help other people, because other people have been in similar situations and or maybe feeling in a similar way and feel like there isn't a way out of that. And she's proof that there is. And that's the most inspiring thing I think I've ever experienced personally to me. But also there's so many stories like that of inspiration, and people that have been to that level of despair. Being an inspiration is the complete antithesis to that.
Yeah.
But that's where you can come from. And that's such a beautiful thing. So no matter how shit life is, you know, out of the shit, beautiful things grow. And I genuinely believe that. So, yeah, things are shit sometimes. But what can you take from that to move forward? And I kind of always look at that. And it's the same with, you know, good things. Good things happen. But also there's lessons to be learned in good things. And again, that sounds really pessimistic, but there's lessons to be learned out of the good things, because we can all be good people and nice people and everything's going well, but the danger with that is that that's when people lose themselves. Staying grounded and humble and relatable, I think, is so important. So yeah, from bad things, good things can happen, but also from good things, I think sometimes bad things can happen if you're not careful. There's like a two-way thing to that.
Sure.
But everything teaches you something. You're constantly learning for the rest of your life. I'll be 80 years old, hopefully, and I'll still be learning. And that's the beautiful thing about relationships and people as well, is that every day someone will surprise you. It doesn't matter how close you are. You're married, yeah?
Yeah.
You and your wife couldn't be more close, connected, but you will never ever know what she's actually thinking, and vice versa.
Yeah.
How exciting and beautiful is that? Do you know what I mean? Like, when you're old, you're still gonna be like, what? That's such a
joy,
fucking lovely, joyful thing.
And that's why the overwhelming emotion that I think you need to have about your life is optimism.
Yeah, probably.
Are you like, not happiness, not joy, not contentment, not self-worth, not yet, one day. But you should at least have optimism that you can get there.
And I think I do, yeah. And I wouldn't have said that a few years ago. But I do, because I think it's steps in the right direction. And actually, rather than being stagnant in a position where I probably was for 15 years I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
And, moving forward it doesn't matter at what pace you're moving forward, you're still moving forward. And that's really important. You don't have to be running 1,000,000 miles an hour. You could be crawling on the floor, but you're still moving in the right direction. And I think that's a really important thing for me and for a lot of people, is to just keep moving in the right direction.
Love it, mate. And I wonder, final question before we move on to our little quick fire round, I wonder where this mindset leaves you when you do things like Strictly. So you're doing Strictly Come Dancing at the moment. Like, does all of that mean that the public vote on a Saturday night actually doesn't matter? Or does it carry a lot of weight for you?
It matters based on the fact that I'll leave the competition if they don't vote for me. But it matters to me that, because this is something completely new for me, like Strictly, I never in a million years thought like I'd be doing that. I know a lot of people do Strictly. It's been my dream, and no, it wasn't my dream. But I'm here, and I'm loving it. And actually, that performance on a Saturday night, if I come out off the back of that performance and get 4 1s from the judges, but I've done the best that I can't give a monkeys.
What would your nan make of it?
She would have loved it. Yeah. She grew up with like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers and all that sort of stuff, and I don't think she ever imagined that I'd be doing ballroom dancing on a Saturday night. Do you know what I mean? That was kind of their era, wasn't it? All that sort of stuff. So yeah, she'd have loved that. And hopefully there's one song that we might be doing which is very, very special to me at some point, if I'm in long enough. That which is going to be a bit of a tribute to her, because she had the best sense of humour, so she'd have found it hilarious watching me strut around like a tit. You know what I mean? But yeah, I would have loved for her to have seen it.
Yeah, she'd be proud, right?
I would hope so.
I think you know so.
I would hope so.
Come on, man.
Struggling to find the motivation? Try this instead.
Take it professionally, not personally.
Why are we postponing love and community and friendship?
I'm not worried if anyone fails, as long as we are changing things for the good.
To have those kinds of friendships, I think, are absolutely essential to being what we would call a high-performance human being.
Take back control over your happiness. Give the High Performance app a try. Then see how you feel.
Some quick fire questions.
And here we go.
The first one actually is about your nan. The greatest piece of advice that she ever gave you, or the biggest thing you learned from your nan? From
my nan. No one is better than you, but you're better than no one. She used to say it to me all the time, regardless of background and everything else.
Lovely. What daily habit that you've taken on in the last few years has most positively impacted your daily life?
not looking at my phone first thing in the morning.
Why?
Because I think as soon as you wake up, and I wake up quite early, looking at your phone straight away, you're straight into anything without giving yourself the breather in the morning to go. So I go outside with the dogs, I have a coffee, a cigarette before I look at my phone. And I think that's so important, because it just gives you even that 10 minutes of just, what are we going to do today, without knowing what you're doing today? How am I going to be today? And also, I feel like it gives you, I know this is not quick fire now, I'm waffling, but it gives you that moment to sense how you feel. Because each day you wake up and you might not know why you're in a mood or why something doesn't feel right. Gives you that 10 minutes to go, I feel good. Or, do you know what I mean? Yeah. And then it can set you up for how you prepare for the rest of the day.
Very nice. What's your biggest strength? You might struggle with that one. And what's your greatest weakness, which I'm sure you'll find easy?
Oh, yeah, that's easy. But do you know what I'm going to say is actually the same answer for both. Being a perfectionist. I think it's a good strength. I want everything to be right and to do everything the best I can at any point. But also this biggest weakness, because if it doesn't always happen and you need more work, I blame myself. So it's the same answer for both.
When did you last cry?
At the weekend.
And why?
Because something came on and said it reminded me of my nan.
She had a real...
That was. I shouldn't have said that, should I?
She had a real impact on you, didn't she? What was it about your nan that was golden?
She was my safety net. She was my best friend. She just had something about her that just made me feel safe, wanted, loved, and she was just everything. If she'd have still been around and I'd have got married, she'd have been my best man. She was just an angel. Like being around her instantly made everything better. And it's not because of advice or anything, it's because she'd just listen and I could tell her she knew everything about me, every single thing.
Beautiful. And that is beautiful, because 99% of people have the emotion when they think of their grandparents of, I wish I'd asked them more questions. I wish I'd known them. You know, you had that, and I think that's special. Yeah,
it's really special, because she wasn't my nan first. She was, and weirdly enough, it was the last thing she ever said to me was that we were soulmates, and like I believe that. I don't know what it is, and do you know what's nice is it's not something that I've realised after she'd gone. I realised it when she was here. Is that there was just something, it was like, I don't know how to explain it. It was just, I think sometimes people meet that kind of person in a partner or a friend or whatever else, and I was just really fortunate to have it all wrapped up in my nan.
Lovely. And the final question, before you go and have that much-earned cigarette outside.
I'm starting to,
I'm sorry, man. It's quite deep, isn't it? What's your one golden rule that you'd like to leave people thinking about for living a high-performance life?
One golden rule. Do everything to the best of your ability, whatever that may look like.
And have you?
I am now.
I love that. Listen, I know that people might not think naturally that getting through the tough days, right, and dealing with the challenges that are often only in our heads that no one can see is high performance. But that's exactly what high performance is. And I think the fact that you've been able to sit here and say that you are now doing the best you can, you've got to get to a place where you know there's nothing more you can do. Be the best you can where you are with what you've got. You said it right at the start. That's all it is. But you have to believe that. And I really hope you do, because I think you've got so much to offer, so much to give. It's one of the most powerful conversations we've ever had in this room, and we've had a lot of them. And even if you're not wholly in love with yourself 24/7, please reflect on that last hour and be incredibly proud of what you shared.
I thank you for having me. But also that's probably the most honest I've been in a long time with anyone. And that's based on you as a person. So
that's kind of you.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to have a tattoo in honour of you.
I heard this last night.
Yeah.
Tattoo, why now? What are you getting? Talk me through it.
I've decided to go for 2 rather than 1.
Mate, I like it.
I was going to go inside wrist on both, because I'm not brave enough to go anywhere else.
Inside, it's quite picky, that one.
Is it?
Yeah, it's quite picky.
Okay.
Do you know what? I might get one.
Yeah, what would you go for?
And I wanted to get this. I haven't got loads of room. I want to get Simply the Best.
Based on?
My nan's funeral song.
Do you know what? Should we do this together then?
Yeah, I'll do it with you.
Let's do it. Get some
My guy.
tattoos. Right, let's go.
Let's do it. Tattoo time.
Alright.
Wherever you put
You do it.
is
So-
where we're gonna tattoo.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So that means
No
for the rest of
pressure.
my life, wherever you place it.
It's there.
That's love, guys.
In honour of your nan. What was her name?
Doreen.
Doreen. Doreen's favourite song. Oh, that looks really good. Yes! You need to dance to this,
Are you happy
bro.
with this?
I'm happy.
Yeah?
Listen. We've got to do it first time. Let's go.
I'm cool with that.
I don't know if I've got it. I've never really checked the spellings on something. I've got a whole poem across my leg.
There's got to be something wrong somewhere.
Yeah, I should probably check the spellings.
Alright, we're ready.
Let's go for it. Yeah.
Spelling is correct.
No regrets.
No
That's honestly. Have you ever seen that tattoo?
Is that true?
Mate, it's across
Oh
someone's
my God.
chest. No regret. It's the best thing.
You know what
Have you seen it? Do you know the one I mean? Google it. Google it. No regrets. And it's just like. To be fair, he looks a bit like me.
Some of this stuff there.
There's still like bits around. I've got like little bits here and there around my ribs, and that's where the things are. It'd be nice to blast some bits in around there.
It's painful.
Yeah. We are.
This wasn't on the brief.
Yeah, this is Jim Smith.
Hello, mate. How you doing? You alright?
Nice to meet you.
You're up next.
This could be it. I could be edgy after this.
Mate, listen, that's what Jake's just done. He's had his first 2 tattoos.
I actually have a tattoo on my bum that my mum doesn't know about.
Is that true?
It says your name.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so
You could do
He's actually
you could put Jake on the other cheek. Right, yeah, I'll mate, I'll get your details and that from these guys, and then we'll.
Yeah, well, Neil's got my phone number.
Yeah, sweet.
Good man.